going on, everybody? Welcome to the podcast. We got something a little bit different for you this week. We're dipping in to that Patreon bucket. So we started a Patreon a few months ago to tackle some behind the scenes stuff, things that we talk about before the podcast gets going, a little bit of that warm up conversation that has these really cool nuggets in it, and also some things that are just a little bit deeper. Sometimes they're a little bit sensitive is not the right word, but just deeper. Deeper is the best word that I can use. So consider this a little free sample brought to you by our Patreon members. Thank you to all our Patreon members out there. Appreciate you so much. This is what goes on over there. So we hope you enjoy it. If it's interesting to you, you can find a link down below to sign up and become a member yourself. It's $5 a month. Not that much. It's about the price of one cup of coffee every month. You can live the dream with us. All right, let's get into it. Peace. All right, dude. Let's talk about your birthday dinner. We have to talk about this.
It was a nice time. Well, let's start with. Hey, I just want to shout out the finest chef in the world, Miss Dominique Chef. Friend. No. Yeah, let's talk about our birthday. Let's talk about it.
Okay, so I'll lay the foundation.
Yeah, lay the foundation here.
A few weeks before his birthday, Jared comes up to me. He's like, there's this place in San Francisco, Atelier Cren. I reached out to the chef and was asking about coffee and her coffee experience, and just Jared's really good at connecting with people. So he reached out to Dominique Cren and was just chatting coffee and was saying, it'd be awesome to come into the restaurant at some point in time. And you had such a positive experience with her, and was also intrigued by the dishes at the restaurant that you were like, fuck it, I'm going to book my birthday dinner there. And this is a 3 Michelin star restaurant on the list of the top 30 best restaurants in the world. It was like
top 50. It's number 35.
Number 35. Okay. Yeah. 35.
There's only like 4 in the United States.
In the world. Yeah. Only 4 restaurants in the U.S. are on that list.
Yeah.
And so it's a pretty penny. It's $326
something like that
a piece.
Yeah, we didn't do any wine pairings, or else it'd have been like close to 5.
Yeah.
It's real money.
You guys can go if you want. And I just totally forgot about it. And then it came back up and I was like, oh shit, we're super down to go. I just totally bricked on it. And then you reached back out. Anyway, they were so hospitable and changed your 2-person reservation to a 4-person reservation and said, just really excited to see you for your birthday. And then we show up in San Francisco next to this place with no sign outside except for the 3 Michelin star
right on the wall
insignia. And then we go in to have a 14-course tasting menu at one of the best restaurants in the world. We'll start there. That's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean that was such a. I mean, I've been dreaming of eating at places like that for most of my life. I always watch cooking shows. I actually really, really resonated with her through watching Mind of a Chef or Chef's Table. I get them mixed up, but she's in one of those too, and it's shot really amazingly. And it was her story prior to even getting 3 stars. At that point, I think she was a 2-star chef. She's the first woman to ever get a 3 Michelin stars, which is also pretty amazing. Like cancer survivor, the whole thing. But her drive for betterment and for mission and people-driven work is really kinship to ours, as a kinship to us. And so, I just wanted to reach out. And one day I reached out and I was like, hey, I really look up to you. I'd love to send you some coffee. And she actually responded, and we started, connecting, and she responds to my stuff. I sent her I sent her a lot of coffee, actually, a handwritten note. She's
kind of amazing. It seems like she's got
a lot of
hundreds of thousands of people on her social platforms.
Yeah, she's proper. I felt really privileged and just honored kind of to have that connection. And I mean, she's genuine. I think that was the thing. And so she started following, and we had a little correspondence on Instagram, and she'd respond to some of my posts, and that felt really cool too. So I was like, oh, she's not just being nice, she's engaging. And so, I mean, I reached out and I was like, oh man, we have a reservation for 2, but my 2, best friends, they were going to potentially come if it's possible. And she's like, oh yeah, I got you. But when we get there, we sit down, it's amazing. We dressed up. It was rad. Wear a suit, the whole 9. And the hospitality is amazing. They sit us 15 minutes early, right when we get there. And then they come out and, you can tell the part that about like chef and all that stuff that's really cool. But even prior to that, they're like, hey, so I hear you're in the industry. It's really cool that you're here. It's amazing that you got in. Like, that's a pretty hard thing to do. You must like, chef must like really like you or something like that. It was something to that effect. Like,
Yeah. Well, he was like, how do you know chef?
yeah, how do you know chef?
And
I was like,
you're
what?
all, coffee?
Yeah, I was like, the internet and
yeah,
coffee?
Instagram? He's all, wow, you're really lucky. Some
Yeah.
people wait a long time for reservations.
That's how it went.
and
Yeah,
choosing things.
you're better at that stuff than I am.
The concierge was legitimately impressed that we were able to switch a reservation and just get in on the fly.
Yeah.
And was
It
pumped.
had to be because it was my birthday. Like, if it wasn't my birthday, I imagine she would have been like, can you rebook another time?
And it's probably really impacted too because they're just opening back up for service after the pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they were one of the only restaurants in San Francisco, one of the few restaurants seating inside at that point, and a lot of places were still outside. Coffee was all walk up. So, I mean, just to walk in, it was really amazing because you don't really know that's the shop. Like, next door is Barcran, which is really cool too. But you walk up and I'm like, I think we're here. You know, you had the address and there's not really any signage and
there's a little plaque on the door and that's
all the windows are covered, even though the lighting is great inside. Everything's good. Everything's amazing.
Yeah, the window covering was awesome because San Francisco's strange.
Yeah.
And depending on where you are, the outsides of the buildings don't really speak to what's on the inside. So when you go inside, it's kind of like you're transported into another world.
Mm-hmm.
And the lighting was perfect, and having no windows, it just put you in a different place.
Yeah, it was
At least for
fantastic.
me, I was like, oh, cool, I'm in a special place, and this is a little bubble.
Yeah. When you're thinking about experience, that's the stuff, right? They want to transport you away from any distraction, is what I felt like.
Yeah,
and
I
it
got
was
the same vibe.
You're in, and that part was great. So, you know, the dude comes out and delivers a little spiel about the history of chef coming from Brittany in France and all pescatarian, vegetarian menu. There's going to be no meat, and we're going to. And then it was like a little brief, really amazing breakdown of where she came from. The menus, the restaurant's named after her father who passed away. All the art on the walls, which I have some pictures of. Maybe we can link it or something, but I'm sure you do too. All the art is her father's art. Her dad was an artist, and this whole thing is essentially a tribute to him, even though it's, you know, her last name is Kren as well. And then they go, and now we're going to begin your meal if that's okay. And then they bring out the pink bubbly, which is a tradition, is you always get champagne to start your meal.
And it was great champagne.
It was
I don't drink
very
a lot of
good.
champagne, but it was proper. I need to find out exactly what it is, and then I probably can't afford it, and then I'll buy it anyway.
Yeah, you got to get one.
I love that they set the stage by telling the story, the backstory of Chef and what it's all about, and some of her thought process in creating the menu. And I was really impressed by every server and the concierge throughout the whole experience. You can tell that everybody really respects her.
Yes.
And is excited about what she does, and they're not just doing a job.
Yep.
They're really into the vibe that's happening. And when they say chef, they say it, and you know that she has both authority and respect at the same time, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that was cool to see there after watching the cooking shows, because you see her camaraderie with her team and how close they are and how she is absolutely both a mentor and a peer at the same time. Like, in the way that she treats them, it's full on like, you're under my wing, but then this is how it goes, you know? And
I was in the
wow
kitchen at Manresa.
Yep.
After that meal, because we were setting up some coffee service, just checking the equipment a few years ago.
Yeah.
And David Kinch was chefing in the kitchen with the crew. And there was, I don't know how many people in the kitchen. It's not a huge kitchen or anything. But there was just this little murmur, and then someone else murmured something, and he, without looking up, without stopping his working, he just goes, quiet, and everybody was just dead silent, and that was it. And I was like, that's the fucking coolest thing ever, because everybody got it. It's not like anyone was
it wasn't a reprimand.
No, it wasn't a reprimand.
Like
it's just like, hey,
reminder.
we're doing this job, this is really important. And what I'm imagining is in the context of creating that sense of place. When you're in the dining room and you hear people talking in the kitchen, it's different, or no one wants to hear casual conversation coming from the kitchen when you're paying $300 a plate for food.
No.
Like you want to be in the moment that you're in that sort of thing.
Right.
That's not a casual dining experience. So I kind of like different people say different things about different chefs and how sometimes kitchen culture is really toxic, but that didn't feel toxic to me. It just felt like, okay, cool, we're all on the same team. We're doing this job together.
Direct professionalism.
Yeah,
there.
it's super pro.
Yeah.
But this was it was crazy how they just got it going. And so every time we had a course, so there's 14 courses.
Yeah.
There were 2 servers that came out plus one other, and generally the one other was explaining the dish.
Typically the chef, I think, who makes the dish too.
Oh, was that who
That's
it was?
What it typically is. So it's the
awesome.
person who created the dish on the night, even though Dominique ends up, for the most part, like curating the actual food, the person who is in charge of the dish walks out and describes it to you. Typically.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't realize that was who was making it.
Yeah, that's totally.
Yeah, and that was killer. And then there's this. So we had 2 couples, and then they had the simultaneous service. I mean,
and they usually they crisscross it, so it's opposite sides of the table.
Yeah. Okay. Let's break it down even further. So if you've never had this kind of experience, each course comes with new flatware, new silverware, new plates, clean table. Everything is 100% just absolutely dialed in. And
their job is to know before their job is to see a cue at the table that you might need something before you're even ready to look up and ask and get there.
Yeah. So they would come, and then they'd drop this. There's this. It's like a square rod, like a brass square rod that they set on the table, and then the fork and the knife that's also hammered brass that matches that rod and goes with the vibe of the plate, because the plating's all different too. Mm-hmm. And it's not like you get the same fork and knife or even the same brand of fork and knife. Everything's unique to that dish. It's like each time a course comes around, you're in a different experience that's all focused around that dish, and that's cool. Yeah, the
best.
The way they lay the silverware out simultaneously, like you said, on opposite sides.
Mm-hmm.
Fork, knife, or whatever the order is.
As simple as this is too, but just your water is never even like halfway empty. They just show up no matter what. It's consistent like the whole night, and you're sparkling your still, which is that's not groundbreaking now. What's groundbreaking there is that you are just like taken care of. You don't have to look at anybody.
Taken care of is I was telling Adam, my friend Adam, who I think we talk about Adam on this podcast a lot. He's a surly kind of guy. So I was telling him about our dinner, and he's like, "Oh yeah." He's all, "You just wanted someone to kiss your ass for 5 hours?"
I didn't realize that.
He's all, "They're just telling you how great you are for 5 hours," and I was like, "It's not even like that."
That's true. It's not.
No one's blowing smoke up your ass. No one's being over the top. But everything you have, you need. You are perfectly taken care of. But
even portion wise, for me, full but perfectly full. It's 4 hours long too. They make sure you're eating a lot.
4.5.
Yeah, it was like 4.5 hours.
Yeah, it was almost on 5, which was interesting because on the website it was expect about 2.5 hour dining experience.
I think they let us go long. We were the second to last people in there besides the big
Other
group.
people were going long too, though.
Yeah, there was
some
a few
of those people
long.
were in. I don't know how you would get through that in 2 hours. Honestly,
I don't either.
Maybe there's a shorter menu sometime. I don't know.
No, I think whatever happened, it happened. I was happy about it. And we were the second seating. There's 2 seatings a night. So we were the second seating, and actually Chef couldn't be there for that, and we can talk about that later. But she served the first seating, and she's famous. She's got a bunch of shit to do. So she had a photo shoot at Bluebell Farms in like Mendocino area.
Sick.
Yeah, which is where she gets a lot of the food that we ate. But you get started. She always starts with this really cool like.
Should we go through the menu right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So I brought the menu. We can, and at the end, which I didn't bring, she actually wrote me a birthday note saying that she's really sorry she couldn't be there to serve me officially, and it even had like the exact time of the day.
It was like 4:53, and we were there at 6 or something.
Yeah,
like that.
And she's that's what she does. She's like really personal about it. But you always start this thing. It's Keir Brenton, which is essentially like that little cocoa butter ball with some sort of perfect gelée on top, and it's got fresh squeezed apple cider on the inside, and it's like a primer
Yeah.
to go with your apple or to go with your champagne.
Yeah.
Your pink
It's like an
bubbly.
amuse-bouche basically,
Uh-huh.
but it's elevated. That shit was so fucking good.
Yeah.
The thing that I liked about it is it's not, the cocoa butter sphere is like a hard shell
Yeah.
sphere. So if you've ever done, which obviously you have, but the sodium alginate, calcium chloride, like espresso caviar things, you pop them and then they like settle on your tongue. This
Yeah.
kind of did full explosion.
Yeah.
For
Full
me,
explosion.
it hit every part of my mouth, which I thought was tight.
It was nice. And then the vessel it came on had like a perfect indent that fit the ball perfectly. So when you pick it up, it was just the intention level with every single dish was hyper specific, like hyper specific. So that was amazing. And then, you get started and they start you with some it's a lot of seafood. I was honestly nervous knowing I was going to go in and eat stuff that I had never eaten. And not because I was going to put it down no matter what. But I'm like, man, I really hope that I like everything because I haven't tried every seafood. And some seafood is a little over the top for me. Sometimes it's a little too seafoody, and I like almost anything. So going in and knowing we were going to get like gooey ducks, like the first thing, which is like a kind of a clam, and it had sea urchin and stone fruit. And it came in a little tartlet, like 4 tartlets and like a.
There was like some dry ice smoke
situation
coming out of it,
smoky.
out of this big like almost conch shell looking
Yeah,
thing.
it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
And presentation was insane. I mean, we've got some pictures we could theoretically throw up somehow. But you start that meal and it's like, okay, here we go. Like this is, uni I've had and I enjoy, but my wife, super not necessarily interested. Gooey duck I'd never had before, and I know that some of those things just kind of taste crazy. And it had stone fruit around it. It had some like peaches and plums all in this thing. And you're all, okay, so we're doing fruit and seafood and a tart right now. Like here we go. And it, like everything else on the meal, was psychotically good and so thought-provoking. I think that's my favorite part of it is everything is interesting. Every bite is a little different and full journey.
Yeah, I think the depth of flavor and food that you can actually think about is kind of one of the keys to that experience.
Yeah.
Because there's all different kinds of good foods. Like
Totally.
there's a ton of good, cheap food that's hits the mark,
Dude,
like
tacos.
a really good taqueria
Full psycho.
hits the mark.
Yeah.
It's undeniably good. Pizza is great.
Yeah.
And this is just a lot of the dishes had so many different layers that were so complex to where you bite it, something hits you, something else hits you, something else
A lot
hits
of
you.
hot cold play.
And then there's like the lingering aftertaste and
It's so
then,
cerebral,
then the
right?
second bite is I was hyper aware of what I was eating. And it's different than you can be like when you bite into a pizza and you're like, oh yeah, that's delicious. I like it.
You wolf it down.
Yeah.
And
Like, I
6
could eat
pieces
more.
later, you're full.
This is like, oh.
Yes.
You don't, for me at least, I didn't immediately classify it as good or bad. I'm like, oh, what's going on? Okay, hang on. I need to think about this for a second.
Every dish.
What? How?
What are they doing?
Strange.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So it's just a whole different zone.
We essentially paid for a nearly 5-hour mindful eating experience, which is like a pretty hidden, amazing feat, right? It's what in the world keeps you in conversation and presence for nearly 5 hours where you wish at the end that it's not over.
I could have stayed.
We were having
longer.
such an awesome time. It was really a bummer to have it be done, and it was like midnight. So
Yeah,
we were actually both tired and like didn't want to leave.
I could have chilled in the bar for
A couple
at least
hours
another
more,
couple
right?
hours for sure.
And that to me is why you do something like this. And I could not do this all the time by any means, or even very often in my life. But you do this, and you go and you have that, and then you go and you have back-to-back oysters, which was crazy. So you have a grilled oyster and some mousse stuff, which is I'm gonna have a hard time remembering exactly what was in it, but it was smoked like something with like sorrel and cream, and remember that it was like, and it was proper oyster, which my
Like I want
my
to
wife
pull up
Brittany
pictures right now.
is an anti-oyster person, and even that one she had a hard time with both the oysters because she like physically hates them, but she ate them both.
She did it though.
And even though so it was the one, it had the proper oyster that was smoked, and it had like a smoked trout cream.
This one.
Yeah. And it had a perfect sorrel leaf on top for like some briny, crisp crunch. And that to me, these two dishes, the oyster stew dishes, were the most like hard to eat's not the right word, but they were the most like adventurous of like I wouldn't order that in a normal meal, and I'm really glad I ate it.
Yeah.
Because those were the ones where you're like, oh wow, this is.
Because the second one, I'm looking at the picture of it.
The second one was where it was frozen in the actual pink drink that we were drinking at the beginning of the night.
Yeah, so it's like a frosé wrapped oyster, but it's not sweet, like
not even a little
like
bit. It
party
was
time
all brine.
frosé.
Yeah,
and it was so interesting to that.
So interesting. That was the most ambitious for my palate.
That cold rosé exterior.
Yeah.
With the oyster.
Yeah.
And this like the sea salty.
It was 100% sea with like, and the part I loved about it was how ice cold everything was. Like it was the most refreshing. Like, oh, I'm literally eating the ocean, and you could taste it and picture it, the whole nine. And that to me, I mean, Brittany had a hard time with that one. She ended up going for the wine, but the rest of us were like, again, you're in it, and you're just thinking about that, and you're like, okay, I get it. This is crazy that you even came up with that. It's all wrapped together. And we got some yummy wine. You know, we asked them to get us wine to match the meal, and that was cool too because all the cups you watch them going out, the glasses, they're all different. They're all pristine. I mean, so essentially, we can't walk through every single thing. I think we got to go with some highlights, right?
Okay.
So, like,
I mean,
out of the four, I mean, that's the thing. Everything was amazing. So
for me,
like, what were some of the hands down things?
Hands down, it was
peas are going to be on there, right?
I think my favorite maybe was the spot prawn. What's that one?
Yeah,
read that.
That was okay. So that was that was spot prawn, multiple seaweeds, and then the whey foam around it.
Okay, so there's this like macerated prawn on a flat dish,
almost like a
tartare, surrounded by a foam that they dished up on the table, and then what's the
multiple different kinds of seaweed.
Yeah, and then on the side of that is this broth, and the broth for me was insane.
Yeah, like I've been thinking about that broth a lot.
The depth of flavor in the broth is like nothing that I've ever tasted before.
You were playing
nothing.
Cold and hot, sweet and umami. And they both have umami, but like that was proper when people talk about like shrimp and things having sweetness, like it was proper sweet.
That had three dimensions for me. There's something about, I don't know, it went into another plane of existence.
Coffee too.
I can't it did have a coffee
in the shrimp heads.
Yeah, I can't even explain it well with my
that's the thing,
with
right?
my language.
But that's the point, I think.
It's like, you know how you have coffee and then espresso is a different level of coffee.
Right.
It's got more depth. It's just a different experience.
Yeah.
This was like that plus another extra layer to where I was in some different, I don't know why, it just hit so hard.
That was one of mine for sure.
It was like, I don't know, fuck, I can't even explain it.
So that one,
it's hard to explain.
The French onion soup was the other one that was absolutely psychotic, and it's so hard to explain because that one had.
So there's a fanned out.
Yep.
Onion with a custard.
They're all pickled, the onions in something with snail escargot eggs row on them, which
Forget
you're like,
what
I'm gonna eat that shit.
Not pickled like avocado toast at the coffee shop pickled.
No, like its own thing. Sitting on like a gelée of green sorrel-y, vegetable-y stuff, and then an onion cauliflower ice cream.
Yes.
Beside it was like, it takes 2+ days to make it, but like a cheese soup, a cheese brine consomme. So nothing in it except for, again, like a broth like this other thing. Insane depth of flavor where there's a cheese course later in the meal, but they take the rinds of that, and for like 48 hours, they reduce it in this soup with like bread crusts and all these other things. And then they give you crackers, these little crackers on the side where you take all the cold and you bite and eat and drink. And that might have been my favorite dish. Although, like, dude, I'm looking at that abalone thing, like the trout sandwich where they made trout custard and they put it in that chocolate sandwich.
Oh yeah,
looks like an ice cream sandwich, but it wasn't.
Trout. It looks like a big, like an Oreo.
Yeah, it's like. Yeah. I mean, you can look at all that.
They were all.
That's the thing. Is like. So for me,
the peas were crazy.
The peas were one of the most amazing. Just like, it's all vegetables, and the thing about all these things is like there's freshness, there's cleanness, there's components to these dishes that are just so engaging. And I'm an adventurous eater, so I was blown away because everything just tasted better than I expected and had me on a different level. The part I really, really, really was psyched about is that my wife is not an adventurous eater, and she really loved the entire meal. And I would say, like, that's a kudos to this kind of food where she doesn't like a lot of shit. And she ate snail eggs. There's stuff that we ate that I would never, ever, ever pick on a menu. And I'm so glad I ate it because it was and will continue to be a memory that, like, I want to go do it again. I absolutely want to do it again.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm like, please bring me back. How can we figure this out?
Well, we started a tradition. We're going to do it on everybody's birthday.
Everybody's birthday. At least you and me.
We're going to have a Michelin star experience somewhere. It's going to start in the States, and we're going to go worldwide.
I've got and
if anybody wants to make a documentary about it, holler at us.
I do want to go to Alinea in Chicago, but the other one in San Francisco, Bento, or I forget the name. We should go there. So this is where I had this other thought. I'm like, okay, the experience plus the quality equals 3 Michelin stars equals worth this amount of money. And that's where I started thinking about nobody's been able to land the quality experience in specialty coffee where they can justify paying more, et cetera, et cetera. And I was on another podcast with Metric, Source Code, and Ben Hameen talking about sourcing coffee. And they were talking about, like, hey, how can we get people to pay more for, like, coffee in general? And do you think there's ever a way for people to buy, like, 81, 82-point coffee and, pay the farmers more for it? And I got immediately frustrated because I said, look, have you ever heard of a Dole Whip? I was like, it costs 30 cents, and they sell them for, like, $7.50. And they're good. But what is really going on there? People love the fucking experience, the experience of being at Disneyland so much that they're willing to pay $7 for a thing because of where they are. So maybe we, as an industry, need to take some responsibility and put some time and effort into really killing it so that we can justify that. And we can. That's where it will take a lot of work. But that's our responsibility. That's our ability. Like, we can do that. Somebody can put together an experience where drinking a diner coffee in a place that you make is worth paying $6 for that diner coffee. I 100% believe that. It just means that we, business owners somewhere out there, need to decide that they're going to make a place that has the level of experience and intention and attention, and people will pay for it because... And it doesn't have to be $350. It could be $50. That's a huge ticket at a coffee shop. But it's something that came into my mind. I'm like, the only reason it's not possible is because nobody really does it justice. And that's literally brass tacks it. It's going to take money. It's going to take effort. It's going to take all these things. You also can make it back. There's also a way for this to work. So we're missing opportunities, but we're not missing opportunities.
Yeah, we're missing opportunities.
Well, the opportunities aren't missed. They're not being pursued. And so we are missing something that's right in front of us.
I think you're on the path.
We're on the path.
You're on the path for sure.
Work to do.
And here's why coffee people suck.
Here's why coffee people suck.
You're fucking lazy. You're lazy.
And you have no vision.
You have an intense connection to this beautiful, amazing product. And I have that same connection. Coffee has changed my life in every way from the time I discovered its magic till now. Most of my adult life has been built around this one thing.
And
coffee.
It consistently delivers.
It blows my mind.
Yeah.
And if you have this experience where this thing is blowing people don't understand. People don't understand how crazy it is. They don't understand how complex it is. They don't understand how much hard work it is. They don't understand blah, 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 blah. It's like, you're right. They don't. Whose fucking job is it to make them understand? Beep. Oh, it's yours. It's your fucking job to make them understand. And guess what? doing one Instagram post a week about how you bought from a certain farmer and how you shook their hand is not enough to move the fucking needle to get people to pay attention and go, oh, this is something that I should actually pay attention to. This is where your ideas come in, because regardless of what coffee farmers should be making or what people should be willing to do, we can't just scream, this is quality, respect it. In the same way that if we went to have that dining experience, she couldn't just slap some really awesome food on the table,
Paper plate,
and be like, yeah, $350.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It does not work.
What do we have in our power to do? We can create those experiences. Okay, how do we create those experiences? Well, it's going to be different for everybody, but you have to do the work. And part of doing the work is going to mean breaking away from that safe model that you already have, which is like, okay, X plus Y equals Z.
300
we know this
today.
to be true. And as
Average
much as
ticket
we
7.
see like fresh design and new things happening in coffee shop, every fucking coffee shop I've seen that opened in the last 10 years, pretty much like the one that came before it. There's nobody out there that I'm aware of that's doing something entirely different.
Right. And that's where the idea came into my mind. I was like, IntelliVentus tried, and they were succeeding. And then everybody who made that place special went somewhere else. And it was interesting to think about that, because I was like, the person who managed that place was not any of the people that we were tied into. Remember that? All the people who managed those places were never the people who were like the stars making the experience. They were always somebody else who's like, oh, that's the manager, and these are all the barista stars, which is just a leadership miss.
And at the time,
goes back to your point,
when it was an experience and it was unique and interesting, everything fizzled, and now it's just a coffee shop.
Exactly.
You know, it's
we didn't. We missed it.
It didn't keep on its trajectory. It was kind of, from what I see from a guest perspective, from the outside looking in, is like, oh, cool, these people are gone. They were the ones that were really passionate about this, that, and the other. Now it doesn't make as much business sense to have this kind of service. So we'll just switch it back. And we have.
And now the line's not out the door
now
down the street.
Now the epic thing is, oh, you order with a barista, which is like, cool, you stole that from Vivace. So what the fuck do you want to say?
Which is like 1989.
It's like, not a big deal, you know? But I agree. We're waiting when you're trying to pitch something to someone or to share something that's super important to you with someone, you got to do a little bit more work. People can't realize the magic because they're not close to you.
Right.
And then at the end of the day, you need to give people something that's worth paying for.
Absolutely.
Some of you people who buy really good coffee,
it gets messed up somewhere between there and then.
I could take or leave your cafe. I could take or leave your QC in the roastery. I could take or leave even just your menu. You know, what's on your menu?
Everything.
I don't know. Whatever the fuck's in season. Who knows? You know, is there really any intentionality into most of these things? Like, sure, base level of intentionality, but there's not the level of intentionality to get to that $10 cup of coffee that we all want to see and we know can be totally fucking worth it.
Right, and that's where we have the opportunity and the work to do, where you have to earn the trust, but then you have to deliver, right? Like, every dish doesn't have to be out of the park, but it all, and I'm calling them dishes now if we're talking food, but every course, which there should be multiple courses if you're going to do something like this, it needs to be as dialed as you can possibly make it, and you need to have the appropriate amount of understanding around what it's supposed to be like and taste like, and you need to bring people in a way that works for you and for them, and that is simple to say, hard to do, but at the end of the day, if somebody were to just take it and break it down and be like, how do I present something really amazing? How do I connect? How do I earn the trust? And you just start asking you those questions and trying something and really committing to it, you could see some pretty dramatic growth. I am pretty inspired right now. Like, literally in my mind have a few ideas for our dream future that I don't know how we're going to do, but we're going to do them. And I know you do too. And I'm really interested to try to be the first or amongst the first to give that Michelin star experience in coffee. And it has to look different than what we've seen. And but it's still going to be coffee.
Well, it's not a coffee shop necessarily.
No, it's an experience.
Yeah, it's an experience. And I could see every level of the experience could be completely amazing. So let's say you started with something like a one-off experience, kind of like a pop-up of this amazing experience. So you through your personal connections, you know, we talked about this. Oh, what if we had a cafe and then there's a door or a false wall
Right.
in one part of the cafe.
Some sort of Harry Potter-esque
that goes to
entrance.
this other room, and
Yeah.
nobody talks about
Through
the
the
room.
fireplace.
All you ever see is people coming out of the room. You're like, what the fuck? Because
Yeah.
maybe they enter from some other place in the building.
Love it.
But, you know, phase one, you get 5 or 6 people who are on your personal contact list. They have a few friends, so you have this seating of 15 or whatever. Yeah. And once you get everybody's invitation, you're like, cool, everybody gets invited, everybody pays. Maybe 3 days later, a gold envelope shows up to their house.
Yeah, get your golden ticket.
You fucking unwrap that envelope, you pull the thing out, and there is, you know, the coordinates to where you need to go, some primer. I don't know, something that makes you feel like you're part of this weird secret society.
Oh, yeah. The menu, maybe, of what you're going to experience.
Maybe the menu, and maybe the menu has, maybe if it's 10 courses, you've got 7 courses listed out, and then 3 empty blank slots that are kind of question marks.
Right.
I don't know.
I mean,
I'm just
originally,
I'm just talking shit here.
Dominique Crenn originally did her menu by poem, so you didn't really know what the food was going to be. You knew the line of the poem, and then she'd deliver the food.
And then she's got this menu here that we're looking at, which is super basic. And
she actually has one online.
A bigger version online where you can
to Wiser. I have it saved.
Go deeper. But what are these? Like, I was watching this show, and they're totally making fun of this shit. I'm watching Future Man, which is a hilarious and terrible show that nobody should watch, but I'm watching it. And there's time travel in it. And one of the guys, Wolf, who he feels totally at home in whatever time zone he ends up in. And he's like a mercenary killer guy. And he ends up in the 80s, and he's fallen in love with the 80s. And he discovers that he's a really amazing chef, and food changes his life. And then he starts this restaurant where they fucking kidnap people. They like attack people, put bags over their heads, and then transport them down into this dungeon and make them think that they're going to die. And then once they find out that they're not going to die, the food, which already tastes amazing, tastes even like better. And it's just, that's like, they're poking fun at this fancy food, high-end food movement. But I'm like, dude, there's something to that A to Z thing, to where it's special from the time you get there till the time that you leave, and nothing in between A and Z happens on accident, and there's nothing that's left in between. All these little things, like they completely clean the restroom after each person that uses it, because that restaurant's pretty small, and it's a 1-person restroom, and it, what would it feel like to go into the restroom and see like a little pee droplet on the toilet seat? You'd be like, what the fuck? Yeah. It doesn't make sense. So every detail is attended to. No one's even tried to create that experience with coffee yet, but it is possible.
It's
maybe at a lower
possible.
Limited price point to get going. Like you said, 300, maybe not right off from the jump.
Less people, less service, more intention, more expensive than
the overhead also is potentially much lower than a restaurant.
It'd be lower with higher tip base, you would imagine, and totally earned. Yeah, it'd be there's so many opportunities, and I think at the end of the day, what is so overlooked is like you pay to be present in a world that fights you to be not present. Like it just challenges you. Like if you want to be literally present in your moment, like these podcasts are honestly really helpful for that. But there's not a lot of things in the world where it's easy to be present. Period, because the world is sucking us away, and so you're paying. To me, to be present with people and food and like have this entire experience that touches all senses for 5 hours, and it can't be really much better than that.
That's where I was saying that whole thing, even though it's ridiculously expensive, is not ridiculous at all. It's actually a bargain for what you get.
Yeah, you break that down. Okay, like $300 divided by 5 hours. How much did I actually pay? Right. And it's still a lot of money, but not.
Considering everything that comes with it, because you're not just paying for the food, you're paying more, not more for the experience, but just as much for that experience, just as much for that bubble of time, like you said. And I think that's where we can do work, and that's a shift, the generational shift, where our parents are like, $3 for a cup of coffee. How much does that cost to make? And it's like, well, you're not paying for the cost of goods. Yeah. You're paying for everything that surrounds that cost of goods. Even in our cafe now, if you come into Cat and Cloud, you're not paying for the price of coffee. That's not the transaction that you're having. You can get that down the street and pay 99 cents all day.
Yeah.
You're paying for the whole thing. You're paying for how the person treats you when you go in the door. You're paying for that attention to detail that you don't get at the corner store. You're paying for how you feel when you look around and see that, oh, weird, the blue floor goes up on the wallpaper, and then there's this cute cat wallpaper, and then there's this other weird thing that I don't understand, and everything feels good.
Yeah.
I feel good when I'm there.
Yeah. And
So-
that's because you're also helping pay and allow us to give our people
Paying for the
healthcare and a month of paid vacation
You're
stipend.
paying for all that. And if you don't want to pay for that, you don't have to. You
Yeah.
can spend much less on coffee, and you can go to the gas station and get it. And I don't even judge you for that.
You just won't feel what we
But
feel.
if you're that kind of person, you're not going to feel what we feel.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's what you're paying for. It's
Yeah.
total package.
And it's worth your time and money. Hey, that's the end of the podcast. Thanks for listening. I know this is the time, the shameless, like classic, we need your help, but we do want to get our message out there, and we do want to share this with a lot of people. So if you could share this with others, you could subscribe, you could rate, you could review. It would greatly help us as we continue to push through not only the YouTube as it's fresh, but also the general podcast as we took nearly an entire year off from doing it. And so please do so, share it. I believe that we have some information and some perspectives that could help not only people in the coffee industry, but people in any industry, any walk of life. So do us that favor, do us that solid, bring us that love, and turn up for us, please. And I hope you all have a great time. Thanks for listening.